In German-occupied Copenhagen, a general strike began on June 26, 1944. 3 days later, after the execution of 8 Danish resistance members, open armed conflict broke out on the streets. With Danish collaborators engaging in counter-sabotage, it seemed that the fabric of Danish society would be torn apart. On April 9, 1940, Denmark awoke to a new reality. German forces swept across its border, transforming a neutral nation into an occupied territory. After almost immediate surrender, the Danish government, including King Christian X, chose a policy of cooperation with the German occupiers. The Copenhagen police, that had been disarmed in the morning, were rearmed after signing a loyalty pledge. The Danish policy, sometimes called the Model Protectorate, was meant to preserve as much Danish self-determination as possible. Those considered unreliable by the occupation authority were immediately arrested. Beneath this cooperative veneer, a sinister current was forming, one that would pit Dane against Dane. While many Danes resisted the occupation in silent acts of defiance, others embraced the ideology of the Third Reich. From these ranks emerged the Schalburg Corps. Named after Christian Frederick von Schalburg, a Danish SS officer killed on the Eastern Front, this paramilitary group was initially formed from returning Danish SS volunteers in 1943. Their mission was brutal: to combat the growing Danish resistance movement, often through counter-sabotage, terror, and intimidation. They were the Germans' eager proxies, a force of Danes turning against their own countrymen. Dressed in black uniforms, their skull insignia striking fear, the Schalburg Corps became symbols of betrayal. They operated with ruthless efficiency, carrying out bombings, assassinations, and arrests, escalating the internal conflict within Denmark. Their actions were not random, they were a deliberate campaign of terror. Homes of known resistance fighters were destroyed. As the resistance gained momentum, so did the brutality of the Schalburg Corps. Collaborators guarded key infrastructure, and targeted killings became a chilling norm. For every act of Danish sabotage against German interests, the Schalburg Corps responded with Schalburgtage, the destruction of Danish property or the assassination of prominent citizens, designed to break civilian morale. The lines of conflict hardened. Denmark, once seemingly a compliant occupation, was now a battleground. The civilian population found itself caught between the demands of the occupiers, the terror of the Schalburg Corps, and the increasingly desperate calls to resistance. The stage was set for an inevitable confrontation. June 1944. The Allies had landed in Normandy. Hope, mixed with desperation, pulsed through occupied Europe. In Denmark, the murder of a beloved resistance leader, and then the suppression of his funeral by German forces and the Schalburg Corps, pushed the population to its breaking point. On June 26th, a spontaneous general strike erupted in Copenhagen. It wasn't organized by Resistance Command. It was a defiant roar from the streets. Workers abandoned factories, businesses closed, and public transport ground to a halt. The city, usually bustling, fell silent. This was not just a protest, it was a collective refusal to cooperate, a direct challenge to the occupation. The German response was swift and brutal. Field Marshal von Hanneken declared a state of emergency, imposing a strict curfew and deploying thousands of German troops to crush the uprising. Danish regular police, unable or unwilling to gain control of the situation, were arrested. With events accelerating on the ground, what began as a strike quickly escalated into a full-scale riot. German forces fired indiscriminately into crowds, and house-to-house searches led to arrests and executions. Barricades rose from the cobblestones, constructed by ordinary citizens. Stones, bottles, and desperation became weapons against German machine guns and tanks. Much of the worst violence was carried out by the Schalburg Corps that drove through the streets in armored cars, firing indiscriminately into crowds and at windows where people were watching. They took part with the Germans in carrying out clearing murders, the random assassination of prominent and well-liked Danes to terrorize the public. The Germans shut off the city's water, gas, and electricity. No food supplies were allowed into the city. For days, Copenhagen transformed into a war zone. The peaceful occupation was shattered. The true face of oppression was laid bare. The fighting raged for 6 days. Despite overwhelming German firepower, the people of Copenhagen refused to back down. The economic impact of the strike, coupled with the sheer defiance of the population, began to weigh on the German command. They understood that a total suppression would only breed deeper resentment and more determined resistance. Against all odds, the German authorities entered into negotiations with Danish politicians and resistance representatives. On July 3rd, an agreement was reached. The Germans would withdraw their troops, ease restrictions, and lift the curfew in exchange for the strike ending. It was an unprecedented victory for civilian resistance. The Volksstreik, or People's Strike, had forced the occupiers to capitulate. The Schalburg Corps continued its terror for a time, but its reputation was irrevocably stained. The 1944 riot marked a turning point. It solidified the Danish people's will to resist and showed the Germans that even a seemingly compliant nation could erupt in defiant fury. The Danes had not just stood up, they had forced a concession from the very heart of the Reich's power. If you like productions like this created from primary historical sources, please take the time to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Patreon supporters get regular access to exclusive footage that can't be shown here. Open a free account on our website military1945.com and stay informed. Thanks for watching.